Devotional service surpasses all liberation. How much a devotee is seriously attached to the devotional service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead can be understood from the statement of Maharaj Prithu. Oops, yes, no, sorry. मज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः नमः विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिनिति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वती देवी गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशकारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौरमुक्त वृंद हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे कृष्ण. Devotional service surpasses all liberation. How much a devotee is seriously attached to the devotional service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead can be understood from the statement of Maharaj Prithu Adi Raja, which is described in Srimad Bhagavatam, 4th canto, 20th chapter, verse 24. He prays to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, thus, my dear Lord, if after taking liberation I have no chance of hearing the glories of your Lordship, glories chanted by pure devotees from the core of their hearts in your praise of lotus feet, just and if I have no chance for this honey of transcendental bliss, then I shall never ask for liberation or this so-called spiritual emancipation. I shall simply always pray unto your Lordship, that you may give me millions of tongues and millions of ears so that I can constantly chant and hear your transcendental glories.
The impersonalists desire to merge into the existence of the Supreme, but without keeping their individuality. They have no chance of hearing and chanting the glories of the Supreme Lord. Because they have no idea of the transcendental form of the Lord, there is no chance of their chanting and hearing of the glories of his transcendental activities. In other words, unless one is already beyond liberation and cannot relish the transcendental glories of the Lord, nor one can understand the transcendental form of the
A similar statement is found in Srimad Bhagavatam, 5th canto, 14th chapter, verse 44. Shukadeva Goswami addresses Parikshit Maharaj and says, the great soul King Bharat was so much attached to the service of the lotus feet of Krishna that he very easily gave up his lordship over the earthly planet and his affection for his general society and friends, royal opulence and beautiful wife. He was so very lucky that the goddess of fortune was pleased to offer him all kinds of material concessions, but he never accepted any of these material opulences. Shukdev Goswami praises his behavior of the King Bharat very highly. He says any person whose heart is attracted by the transcendental qualities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Madhusudana, does not ke- does not care even for that liberation which is aspired by many great sages, what to speak of the material opulences.
In the Bhagavatam 6th canto, 11th chapter, verse 25, there is a similar statement by Tritasur, who addresses the Lord as follows. My dear Lord, by leaving your transcendental service, I may be promoted to the planet called Dhruva Loka, the pole star, or I may gain lordship over the planetary systems of the universe, but I do not aspire to this, nor do I wish the mystic perfections of yoga practice, nor do I aspire to spiritual emancipation. All I wish for, my Lord, is your association and transcendental service eternally.
This statement is confirmed by Lord Shiva in Srimad Bhagavatam, 6th canto, 17th chapter, verse 28, wherein Lord Shiva addresses Sati thus, my dear Sati, persons who are devoted to Narayana, Krishna, are not afraid to anything. If they are elevated to the higher planetary system, or if they get liberation from material contamination, or if they are pushed down to the hellish condition of life, or in fact, in any other situation, whatever, they are not afraid of anything, simply because they have taken shelter of the lotus feet of Narayana. For them, my position in the material world is as good as another.
There is a similar statement by Indra, the king of heaven, in Srimad Bhagavatam, 6th canto, 18th chapter, verse 74. There Indra addresses Mother Deity in this manner. My dear mother, persons who have given up all kinds of desires and are simply engaged in devotional service to the Lord know what is actually their self-interest. Such persons are actually serving their self-interest and are considered first-class experts in the matter of advancing to the perfectional stage.
In the seventh canto of Bhagavatam, sixth chapter, verse 25, Maharaj Prahlad says, "My dear friends born into atheistic families, if you can please the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna, then there is nothing more rare in this world. In other words, if the Supreme Lord Krishna is pleased with you, then any desire you may have within the core of your heart will be fulfilled without any doubt. As such, what is the use of elevating yourself by the results of fruitive activities which are automatically achieved in all events by the modes of material nature? And what is the use for you of spiritual emancipation or liberation from material bondage? If you are always engaged in chanting the glories of the Lord, Supreme Lord, and always relishing the nectar of lotus feet of the Lord, then there is no necessity for any of these. By this statement, Prahlad Maharaj it is clearly understood that one who takes pleasure in chanting and hearing the transcendental glories of the Lord has already surpassed all kinds of material benedictions, including the results of fruitive activities, sacrifices, and even liberation from material bondage.
Similarly, in the seventh canto, eighth chapter, verse 42, when demigods are offering prayers to Lord Narasimha, Indra, the king of heaven, says, O Supreme One, these demons talk of our share of participation in the performances of ritualistic sacrifices, but by simply your appearance as Lord Narasimha Dev, you have saved us from terrible fears. Actually, our shares in the sacrificial performances are due to you only, because you are the supreme enjoyer of all sacrifices. You are the super soul of every living entity, and therefore you are the actual owner of everything. Long were our heart, long were our hearts always filled with fear of this demon Hiranyakashipu. But you are so kind toward us that by killing him, you have removed that fear from within our hearts and have given us the chance to place your lordship within our hearts again. For persons who are engaged in the transcendental loving service of your lordship, all the opulences which were taken away from us by the demons are counted as nothing. Devotees do not care even for liberation. What to speak of these material opulences? Actually, we are not enjoyers of the fruits of sacrifices. Our only duty is to be engaged in your service, for you are the enjoyer of everything.
The purport of this statement by Indra is that, beginning from Brahma down to the insignificant ant, no living entities are meant for enjoying the material opulences. They are simply meant for offering everything to the Supreme Proprietor, the personality of Godhead. By doing so, they automatically enjoy the benefit. The example that the example can be cited again of the different parts of the body collecting foodstuffs and cooking them so that ultimately a meal may be offered to the stomach. After it has gone to the stomach, all parts of the body equally enjoy the benefit of the meal. So similarly, everyone's duty is to satisfy the Supreme Lord, and then automatically everyone will become satisfied.
A similar verse is found in the eighth canto, third chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, verse 20. Gajendra says there, My dear Lord, I have no experience of the transcendental bliss derived from your devotional service, so therefore I asked from you some favor. But I know that persons who are pure devotees by the have by serving the lotus feet of great souls become freed from all material desires and always merged in the ocean of transcendental bliss, and as such they are always satisfied by simply by glorifying your auspicious characteristics for them. There is nothing else to aspire or to pray for you. In the ninth canto of Bhagavatam, fourth chapter, verse 67, the Lord of Vaikuntha replies to Durvasa Muni thus, My pure devotees are always satisfied by being engaged in devotional service, and therefore do not aspire even after the five liberated stages which are to be one with me, to achieve residence on my planet, to have my opulences, to possess bodily features similar to mine, and to gain personal association with me. So when they are not interested even in these liberated positions, you can know how little they care for material opulences and material liberation.
There is a similar prayer by the Nagapatnis, wives of the Kaliya serpent. In the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 16th chapter, verse 37, the Nag Patnis say, Dear Lord, the dust of your lotus feet is very wonderful. Any person who is fortunate enough to achieve this dust does not care for heavenly planets, lordship all over all the planetary systems, the mystic perfections of yoga, or even liberation from material existence. In other words, anyone who adores the dust of your lotus feet does not care for a fig for all other perfectional stages. There is a similar statement in the 10th canto, 87th chapter, verse 21, wherein the Shrutis, the Vedas, personified pray to the Lord as follows. Dear Lord, it is very difficult to understand spiritual knowledge. Your appearance here, just as you are, is to explain us that the most difficult subject of knowledge of the spirit. As such, your devotees who have left their domestic comforts to associate with the liberated acharyas, teachers, are now fully merged in the devotional service of your lordship, and thus they do not care for any so-called liberation.
In explaining this verse, it should be noted that spiritual knowledge means understanding the self and the super soul or the super self. The individual soul and the super soul are qualitatively one, and therefore both of them are known as Brahma or spirit. And knowledge of Brahman is very difficult to understand. There are also many philosophers engaged in the matter of understanding the soul, but they are unable to make any tangible advancement. It is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita that out of many millions of persons, only one may try to understand what is the spiritual knowledge. And out of many such persons who are trying to understand, only one or few may know what is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this verse says that the spiritual knowledge is very difficult to achieve, and so in order to make it more easily attainable, the Supreme Lord Himself comes in His original form as Sri Krishna and gives His instruction directly to an associate like Arjuna, just so that the people in general may take advantage of this spiritual knowledge. This verse also explains that liberation means having completely given up all the material comforts of life. Those who are impersonalists are satisfied by simply being liberated from the material circumstances, but those who are devotees can automatically give up material life and enjoy the transcendental bliss of hearing and chanting the wonderful activities of Lord.
In the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 20th chapter, verse 34, the Lord Krishna says to Uddhava, My dear Uddhava, the devotees who have completely taken shelter of my service are so steadfast in devotional service that they have no other desire, even if they are offered the four kinds of spiritual opulences. They will refuse to accept them. So, what to speak of the desiring anything within the material world? Similarly, Lord Krishna says in another passage of the Bhagavatam, 11th canto, 14th chapter, verse 14, My dear Uddhava, a person whose consciousness is completely absorbed in my thought and activities does not aspire to occupy the post of Brahma or the post of Indra or the post of the lordship over the planets or the eight kinds of mystic perfections or even liberation itself. In the 12th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th chapter, verse 6, Lord Shiva says to Devi, My dear Devi, this great Brahmana sage Markandeya has attained unflinching faith and devotion unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and, and as such he does not aspire for any benedictions, including liberation from the material world.
The fifth kind of liberation, merging with the Supreme, is not considered an opulence in spiritual varied existence. Similarly, there is a statement in Padma Purana describing the ritualistic function during the month of Kartik, October-November. During this month in Vrindavan, it is the regulative principle to pray daily to Lord Krishna in his Damodar form. The Damodar form refers to Krishna in his childhood, and he was tied up with rope by his mother Yashoda. Dama means rope and Udar means the abdomen. So Mother Yashoda, being disturbed by naughty Krishna, bound him round the abdomen with a rope. Thus, Krishna is named as Damodar. During Kartik, Damodar is prayed to as follows: My dear Lord, you are the Lord of all, the giver of all benediction. There are many demigods like Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva who sometimes offer benedictions to their respective devotees. For example, Ravana was blessed with so many benedictions by Lord Shiva and Hiranyakashipu was blessed by Lord Brahma. But even Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma depend on the benedictions of Lord Krishna, and therefore Krishna is addressed as the Lord of all benefactors. As such, Lord Krishna can offer his devotees anything they want, but still the devotee's prayer continues as I do not ask you for liberation or any kind of material facility up to the point of liberation. What I want as your favor is that I may always think of your own form in which I see you now as Damodar. You are so beautiful and attractive that my mind does not want anything else besides this wonderful form. In this prayer, there is another passage in which it is said, my dear Lord Damodar, once you were playing as a naughty boy in the house of Nanda Maharaj, you broke the box containing yogurt, and because of that, Mother Yashoda considered you an offender and tied you with rope to the household grinding motor. At that time, you delivered the two sons of Kuvera, Nalkuver and Manigri, who were staying there as two Arjuna trees in the yard of Nand Maharaj. My only request is that by your merciful pastimes, you may similarly deliver.
The story behind this verse is that the two sons of Kuvera, the treasurer of the demigods, were puffed up on the account of the opulence of their father. And so once on a heavenly planet, they were enjoying themselves in a lake with some naked damsels of heaven. At that time, the great Saint Narad Muni was passing on the road and was sorry to see the behavior of the sons of Kuvera. Seeing Narad passing by, the damsels of heaven covered their bodies with cloth, but the two sons, being drunkards, did not have this decency. Narada became angry with the behavior and cursed them thus, you have no sense. So it is better if you become trees instead of the sons of Kuvera. Upon hearing this, the boys became trees, and you will understand. Sorry. Upon hearing this, the boys came to their senses and begged Narad to be pardoned of their offenses. Narada then said, yes, you shall become trees, Arjuna trees, and you will stand in the courtyard of Nanda Maharaj. But Krishna himself will appear in the time as foster son of Nanda, and he will deliver you. In other words, the curse of Nanda was a benediction for the sons of Kuvera because indirectly it was foretold that they would be able to receive the favor of Lord Krishna. After that, Kuvera's two sons stood as two big Arjuna trees in the courtyard of Nand Maharaj until Lord Damodar, in order to fulfill the desire of Narada, dragged the grinding motor to which he was tied and struck the two trees violently, causing them to fall down. From out of these fallen trees came Nalakuvara and Manigriva, who had then become great devotees of Lord.
There is a passage in the Hayashriva Pancharatra that states, my dear Lord, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, I do not want any resultant benediction from my religious life, nor do I want any economic development, nor do I want to enjoy sense gratification nor liberation. I simply pray to be an eternal servant at your lotus feet. Kindly oblige me and give me this benediction. In the same Hayashriva Pancharatra, after Narsimhadev wanted to give benedictions to Prahlad Maharaj, Prahlad did not accept any material benediction and simply asked for the favor of the Lord to remain his eternal devotee. In this connection, Prahlad Maharaj cited the example of Hanuman, the eternal servant of Lord Ramachandra, who also set an example by never asking any material favor from the Lord. He always remained engaged in the Lord's service. That is the ideal character of Hanuman, for which he is still worshipped by all devotees. Prahlad Maharaj also offered his respectful obeisances unto Hanuman. There is a well-known verse spoken by Hanuman in which he says, my dear Lord, if you like, you can give me salvation from this material existence or the privilege of merging into your existence. But I do not wish any of these things. I do not want anything that diminishes my relationship with you as servant to master, even after liberation.
In a similar passage in the Narad Pancharatra, it is stated, my dear Lord, I do not wish any perfectional stage by performing the ritualistic religious ceremonies or by economic development or by sense gratification or liberation. I simply pray that you grant me the favor of keeping under your lotus feet. I do not wish any kind of liberation such as Salokya, to reside on your planet, or Sarupya, to have the same bodily features as you. I simply pray for your favor that I may always be engaged in your loving service. Similarly, in the 6th canto, 14th chapter, verse 5 of Srimad Bhagavatam, Maharaj Parikshit inquires from Sukadev Goswami, My dear Brahmana, I understand that the demon Vrishtasura was a great sinful person and that his mentality was completely absorbed in the mode of passion and ignorance. How did he develop such a perfectional state of devotional service to Narayana? I have heard that even great persons who have undergone severe austerities and who are liberated with full knowledge must strive to become devotees of the Lord. It is understood that such persons are very rare and almost to be never seen. So I am astonished that Vrishtasura became such a devotee.
In the above verse, the most important thing to be noted is that there may be many liberated persons who have merged into the existence of the impersonal Brahman. But a devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayan, is very, very rare. Even out of millions of liberated persons, only one is fortunate enough to become a devotee. In Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, 8th chapter, verse 20, Queen Kunti is praying to Lord Krishna at the time of his departure. My dear Krishna, you are so great that you are inconceivable even to great stalwart scholars and paramhamsas, fully liberated souls. So, if such great sages who are transcendental to all reactions of the material existence are unable to know you, then, as far as we are concerned, belonging to the less intelligent women class, how is it possible for us to know your glories? How can we understand you? In this verse, the particular thing to be noted is that the personality of Godhead is not understood by great liberated persons, but only by devotees such as Queen Kunti in her humbleness. Although she was a woman and was considered less intelligent than a man, but she realized the glories of Lord Krishna. This is the purpose. That is the purpose.
Another passage that is very important is in Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, 7th chapter, verse 10, and is called the Atma Rama verse. In this Atma Rama verse, it is stated that even those who are completely liberated from material contamination are attracted by the transcendental qualities of Lord Krishna. The purport of this verse is that a liberated soul has absolutely no desire at all for material enjoyment. He is wholly freed from all kinds of material desires, yet still he is irresistibly attracted by the desire to hear and understand the pastimes of the Lord. We may therefore conclude that the glories and pastimes of the Lord are not material. Otherwise, how could the liberated person know as Atma Ramas be attracted by such pastimes? That is the important point in this verse.
This Atmaram verse was once nicely explained by Lord Chaitanya to Sanatana Goswami. There is a detailed explanation of this verse in the author's teachings of Lord Chaitanya. From the above statement, it is found that a devotee is not after any stages of liberation. There are 5 stages of liberation, already explained as being to become one with the Lord, to live on the same planet as the Lord, to obtain the same bodily features as the Lord, to have the same opulences as the Lord, and to have constant association with the Lord. Out of these 5 liberated stages, the one which is known as Sahujya, or to merge into the existence of the Lord, is the last to be accepted by a devotee. The other 4 liberations, although not desired by devotees, are still not against the devotional ideas. Some of the liberated persons who have achieved these 4 stages of liberation may also develop affection for Krishna and be promoted to Golok Vrindavan planet in the spiritual sky. In other words, who are already promoted to the Vaikuntha planets and who possess the 4 kinds of liberation may also sometimes develop affection for Krishna and become promoted to Krishna Lok.
So those who are in the four liberated stages may still be still going through different stages of existence. In the beginning, they may want the opulences of Krishna, but at the mature stage, the dormant love for Krishna exhibited in Vrindavan becomes prominent in their hearts. As such, the pure devotees never accept the liberation of Sayugya to become one with the Supreme. Though sometimes they may accept a favorable the other 4 liberated stages. Out of many kinds of devotees, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the one who is attracted to the original form of the Lord of the Lord Krishna in Vrindavan is considered to be the foremost, first-class devotee. Such a devotee is never attracted by the opulences of Vaikuntha or even Dwarka, the royal city where Krishna ruled. The conclusion of Sri Rupa Goswami is that the devotees who are attracted by the pastimes of the Lord in Goloka Vrindavan are the topmost devotees.
Vrindavan is the transcendental place where Krishna enjoys his eternal pastimes as a boy and is considered the topmost sphere in all existence. When this Vrindavan is exhibited in the material world, the place is called Gokul, and in the spiritual world, it is called Goloka or Golok Vrindavan. A devotee who is attached to a particular form of the Lord does not wish to redirect his devotion to other forms. For example, Hanuman, the devotee of Lord Ramachandra, knew that there is no difference between Lord Ramachandra and Lord Narayan, and yet he still wanted to render service only unto Lord Ramachandra. That is due to the specific attraction for a particular devotee. So there are many forms of the Lord, but Krishna is still the original form. Though all the devotees of the different forms of the Lord are in the same category, still it is said that those who are devotees of Lord Krishna are the topmost in the list of all devotees.
The purity of devotional service. All of the previous instructions imparted by Srila Rupa Goswami in his broad statements can be summarized thus. As long as one is materially inclined or desirous of merging into the spiritual effulgence, one cannot enter into the realm of pure devotional service. Next, Rupa Goswami states that devotional service is transcendental to all material considerations, and that is not limited to any particular country, class, society, or circumstance. As stated in Srimad Bhagavatam, devotional service is transcendental and has no cause. Devotional service is executed without any hope for gain, and it cannot be checked by any material circumstances. It is open for all, without any distinction, and it is constitutional occupation of the living entities.
In the Middle Ages, after the disappearance of Lord Chaitanya's great associate Lord Nityananda, a class of priestly persons claimed to be the descendants of Nityananda, calling themselves as the Goswami caste. They further claimed that the practice and spreading of devotional service belonging only to their particular class, which was known as Nityananda Vamsha. In this way, they exercised their artificial power for some time until Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, the powerful Acharya of the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, completely smashed their idea. There was a great hard struggle for some time, but it has turned out successfully, and it is now currently and practically established that devotional service is not restricted to a particular class of man. Besides that, anyone who is engaged in devotional service is already at the status of being a high class Brahmana. So, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur's struggle for this movement has come out successful.
It is on the basis of his position that anyone can now become a Gaudiya Vaishnava from any part of the world or any part of the universe. Anyone who is a pure Vaishnava is situated transcendentally and therefore the highest qualification in the material world, namely to be the mode of goodness, has already been achieved by such a person. Our Krishna consciousness movement in the Western world is based on the above mentioned proposition by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada, our spiritual master. On his authority, we are claiming members from all sections of the Western countries. The so-called Brahmanas claim that one who is not born into a Brahman family cannot receive the sacred thread and cannot become a high-grade Vaishnava. But we do not accept such a theory because it is not supported by Rupa Goswami or by the strength of the various scriptures.
Sri Rupa Goswami specifically mentions hearing that every man has the birthright to accept devotional service and to become Krishna conscious. He has many evidences he has given many evidences from many scriptures, and he specially quoted one passage from Padma Purana wherein the says Vashishta tells King Dilip, my dear king, everyone has the right to execute devotional service just as he has the right to take a early bath in the month of Magha, December, January. There is more evidence in the Skanda Purana in the Kashi Khand portion where it is said in the country known as Mayur Dhwaja, the lower caste people who are considered less than Shudras are also initiated in the Vaishnav cult of devotional service, and when they are properly dressed with tilak on their bodies, beads in their heads and on their necks, they appear to be coming from Vaikuntha. In fact, they look so very beautiful that immediately they surpass the ordinary Brahmanas.
Thus, a Vaishnava automatically becomes a Brahmana. This idea is also supported by Sanatana Goswami in his book Hari Bhakti Vilas, which is the Vaishnava Guide. Therein, he has clearly stated that any person who is properly initiated into the Vaishnava cult certainly becomes a Brahmana. As much as the mental known as comes up, bell mental is bell metal is turned into gold by a mixture of mercury. A bona fide spiritual master, under the guidance of authorities, can turn over turn anyone to the Vaishnava cult so that naturally he may become to the topmost position of a Brahmana.
Srila Rupa Goswami warns, however, that if a person is properly initiated by a bona fide spiritual master, you should not think that simply by the acceptance of such initiation his business is then finished. One has to strictly follow the rules and regulations very carefully. If after accepting the spiritual master and being initiated, one does not follow the rules and regulations of devotional service, then he is again fallen. One must be very vigilant to remember that he is a part and parcel of the transcendental body of Krishna, and that it is his duty as part and parcel to give service to the whole or Krishna. If we do not render service to Krishna, then again we fall down. In other words, simply becoming initiated does not elevate oneself to the position of a high class brahmana. One has to discharge the duties and follow the regulative principles very rigidly.
Sri Rup Goswami also says that if one is regularly discharging devotional service, there will be no question of a fall down. But even if circumstantially there is some fall down, the Vaishnav need have nothing to do with the Prayasthita, Prayasthita, the ritualistic ceremony for purification. If someone falls down from the principles of devotional service, he need not take the Prayasthita performance for reformation. He simply has to execute the rules and regulations for discharging devotional service, and this is sufficient for his reinstatement. This is the mystery of a Vaishnava devotional cult.
Practically, there are three processes for elevating one to the platform of spiritual consciousness. These processes are called karma, jnana, and bhakti. Ritualistic performances are in the field of karma. Speculative performances processes are in the field of jnana. One who is taken to bhakti, the devotional service of the Lord, need have nothing to do with karma or gyan. It is already explained that pure devotional service is without any tinge of karma or gyan. Bhakti should have no tinge of philosophical speculation or ritualistic performances. In this connection, Srila Rupa Goswami gives evidence from Srimad Bhagavatam, 11th canto, 21st chapter, verse 2, in which Lord Krishna says to Uddhava, the distinction between disqualification and qualification may be made in this way. Persons who are already elevated in discharging devotional service will never again take shelter of the processes of fruitive activity or philosophical speculation. If one sticks to devotional service and is conducted by the regulative principles given by the authorities and acharyas, that is the best qualification.
This statement is supported in Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, fifth chapter, verse 17, wherein Sri Narada Muni advises Vyasadeva thus: even if one does not execute his just a second, Mataji. Sorry. Even if one does not execute his specific occupational duty but immediately takes direct shelter of the lotus feet of Hari, there will be no fault on his part. In all circumstances, his position is secure. Even if by some bad association he falls down while executing devotional service, or if he doesn't finish the complete course of devotional service and dies ultimately, but still he's not at a loss. A person who is simply discharging his occupational duty in Varna and ashram, however, with no Krishna consciousness, practically does not gain the true benefit of human life. The purport is that all conditioned souls who are engaged very clandestinely in activities for sense gratification without knowing that the process will never help them to get out of this material contamination are awarded with the repeated births and deaths.
In the fifth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, it is clearly stated by Rishabdev to his sons, persons engaged in fruitive activities are repeatedly accepting birth and death until they develop a loving feeling for Vasudev. There will be no question of getting out from these stringent laws of material nature. As such, any person who is very seriously engaged in his occupational duties in the Varnas and Ashramas and who does not have and who does not develop love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vasudev, should be understood to be simply spoiling his human form of life.
Very sorry for the background noise. This is confirmed also in the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 11th chapter, verse 32, in which the Lord says to Uddhava, my dear Uddhava, any person who takes shelter of me in complete surrender and follows my instructions, giving up all occupational duties, is to be considered the first class man. In this statement to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, it is understood that people who are generally attracted to philanthropic, ethical, moral, and political and social welfare activities may be considered nice men only in the calculation of the human material world. From Srimad Bhagavatam and other authentic Vedic scriptures, we further learn that if a person simply acts in Krishna consciousness and discharges devotional service, he is considered to be far, far better situated than all other persons who engage in philanthropic, ethical, moral, illustrative, and social welfare activities.
The same thing is still more emphatically confirmed in Srimad Bhagavatam 11th canto 5th chapter 4, verse 41, in which Kairabhajan Muni addresses Maharaj Nimi as follows. My dear king, if someone gives up his occupational duties as they are prescribed for the different varnas and ashramas, but takes complete shelter surrendering himself unto the lotus feet of the Lord, such a person is no more debtor nor has any obligation to perform the different kinds of activities we render to the great sages, ancestors, living entities, and family and society members, nor has he any need to bother executing the five kinds of yagyas for becoming free from simple contamination. Simply by discharging devotional service, he is free from all kinds of obligations. The purport is that as soon as a man takes his birth, he is immediately indebted to so many sources. He is indebted to the great sages because he profits by reading their authoritative scriptures and books. For example, we take advantage of the books written by Shri Vyasadeva. Vyasadeva has left for us all Vedas, but before Vyasadeva writing, the Vedic literature was simply heard and the disciples would learn the mantras quickly by hearing, not by reading. Later on, Vyasadeva thought it was right to write down the Vedas because in the age of Kali Yuga, people are short memorized and are unable to remember all the instructions given by the spiritual master. Therefore, he left all the Vedic knowledge in the form of books such as Puranas, Vedanta, Mahabharata, and Srimad Bhagavatam.
There are many other sages like Shankaracharya, Gautama Muni, and Narad Muni to whom we are indebted because we take advantage of their knowledge. Similarly, we are obliged to our forefathers because we take birth in a particular family where we have all advantages and inherit property. Therefore, we are indebted to the forefathers have our have to offer them pinda prasada after they are dead. Similarly to the people in general, we also indebted as well as our relatives, friends, and even animals such as cows and dogs who render us so much service. In this way, we are indebted to the demigods, to the further forefathers, to the sages, to the animals, and to the society in general. It is our duty to repay them all by proper discharge of service, but by the uh, but by the one stroke of devotional service. If someone gives up all obligations and simply surrenders unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he is no longer a debtor nor obliged to any other source of benefit.
In Bhagavad Gita also the Lord says, give up all your occupations and just become surrendered unto me. I give you assurance that I shall give you protection from all sinful reactions. One may think that because he is surrendering unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he will not be able to perform all of his other obligations. But the Lord says repeatedly, don't hesitate, don't consider that because you are giving up all your other engagements, there will be some flaw in your life. Don't think like that. I will give you all protection. That is the assurance of Lord Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. There is additional evidence in the Agastya Samhita as the regulative principles of scripture are not required by a liberated person, so the ritualistic principles indicated in the Vedic supplements are also not required for a person duly engaged in the service of Lord Ramachandra. In other words, the devotees of Lord Ramachandra or Krishna are already liberated persons and are not required to follow all the regulative principles mentioned in the ritualistic portions of the Vedic literature.
Similarly, in the 11th canto Srimad Bhagavatam, 5th chapter, verse 42, Karabhajana Muni addresses King Nimi and says, "My dear king, a person who has given up the worship of the demigods and has completely concentrated his energy in the devotional service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead has become very, very dear to the Lord. As such, if by chance or mistake he does something that is forbidden, there is no need for him to perform any purificatory ceremonies because the Lord is situated within the heart and he takes compassion for the devotees' accidental mistakes and corrects him from within. It is also confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita in many places that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, takes a special interest in his devotees and declares emphatically that nothing can cause his devotees to fall down. He is always protecting them.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare